So I've had a very interesting artistic journey. Never planned on being full-time professional artist. That's a long story in and of itself. But I went from working in marketing to being a self-employed artist, where I saw a niche with hand-painted furniture that I felt I could offer a service and do it better and at a better price. So that was me using my marketing and seeing consumer demand for something that I felt I could meet. And then over time, that's the storyline of my career, is having to pivot and change when customer demands pivoted and changed. So from hand painted furniture, people start asking me, well, could you paint this scene on my wall? And that led me to doing murals and overcoming that original obstacle and fear of painting on someone's bare wall. And then eventually I also created a line of artwork for children, kind of to meet that market. And then over the years, I started doing more things in commercial environments. I went from residential in people's homes to commercial hospitals and medical centers, pediatric offices, and then always doing a lot of nature. I always did animals a lot. So I've worked with a lot of different kind of clients in 25 years, and some of the most kind of high-end or extreme versions of that were several members of the Saudi royal family in the early, 2008 to 2012-ish. I worked with them a lot, with different members of the family through a designer, and that was tough because it was a little stressful because the designer I work with is very particular and exacting, and so the bar was set very high. My favorite one, though, was an underwater playroom in this incredibly ostentatious house, and it was in the basement, and you walked in through, created like a vestibule, like you were going into a submarine, and you would look out the window, and there were mermaids with sequins, and there was crystals, Swarovski crystals on the fish, and then the kids could go through a slide into the underwater playroom. And then I had come up with the concept of having a little art creative thing, like they were inside of a little submarine, and there were like portals, and then there was I painted all the dolphin and the fish, and there were 3D structures with shells covered in crystals, and it was over the top. But that was just something that I had never been able to have that much creative license and make it that over the top. And it was nice to have, and that was the designer and I worked together on that. So that was really a cool project, kind of like any kid's fantasy, to have a space like that. So that was fun. The inner kid in me really enjoyed being able to be truly creative with that. Justice kind of social issue artwork really came about where I was kind of, I wouldn't say tired of doing the other things, but there were other things I wanted to bring more concept into my artwork rather than being reactive. Just, can you paint this? Yes, I can. I wanted to actually inject a little of myself into it, or things I was interested in pursuing, and so an interest in storytelling also kind of came into it. And this most recent pivot came about to doing the focus on the dogs and these pet story project and this kind of stuff because, well, it was pre-pandemic, I was interested in it, and then with the pandemic, obviously a lot of other normal activities of murals and other things were really curtailed, so it was kind of out of, again, necessity being the mother of invention, always changing and pivoting. So, but this is something where it brings in, again, my interest in storytelling, doing collaborative work, and also something I'm interested in because I love dogs and kind of curious about human relationships with dogs and what that says about us. Some of the work I'm most proud of is the work I did down for MCV, now VCU Health Center. In the early 2000s, I did a ton of paintings for the pediatric floor and even for the pediatric intensive care unit, and I've done 2 projects for the old and the new chemotherapy treatment center down there. So work where it was in an environment where there were children who were sick or their families were there, and trying to create almost a visual transportation for them to take one out of what is a very I'm sure, really scary and kind of sterile environment. I did over the years have people tell me that they, who had been through those environments, that it meant a lot to them. And so that's probably what I'm most proud of, and having some meaning. And although I will say the Senior Connections mural and the Maggie Walker mural now, I would say, are right up there with it, because that was those collaborative kind of interactive murals, community-based projects that I really got a lot out of, and I think other people did too. So I think I'm finding that things that bring other people into the work is very rewarding for me. Okay, I'll start first with the Senior Connections Transforming Perspectives mural, which was about aging. I think the idea came about because I had, my parents were older, and my dad couldn't drive because of having had a fall, and my mother didn't drive, and some of the issues of isolation and just being conscious of some of the problems that our seniors have, or older adults, and that the fact that they still had a lot to offer and give in terms of wisdom and skills. And I felt like we as a culture are very ageist. We kind of discount a lot of older people as if they're really relegated to not of much worth and value, and that really upset me. So I wanted to do something to raise awareness of the fact there was all these great gifts and knowledge there, and wisdom to be captured and shared. And so that was the genesis for that. And that was a really amazing project. I think it was a very different experience if I had just come up with a design and then painted it myself. I had 515 participants at community-based parties. I went to retirement homes. I had different senior groups I worked with, where people who, of all ages, I had kids from 2 years old with the help of their parents do the painting on these panels, all the way up to 102. And so I love the fact that people could look at this 1,000-square-foot mural on the side of a wall, it's 40 feet in the air, and know they had helped paint it. Like it was an empowerment thing, I think, and a shared community thing. Plus, it was all about sharing the learning that was gathered in the making of the process, making of the project. So the ideas I was exploring in Transforming Perspectives was about these almost recipes for life that these older people were giving. So it was then when people would participate and learn about it, they'd be learning those lessons. And then with Maggie Walker, same thing. She's such an amazing figure, but I knew that even myself, I knew some things about her, and I knew some of the students knew about the bank. But I felt like once I did some more research about her, that she was a really unsung hero of not only Richmond, but Virginia, and also of the nation, in terms of being an early civil rights activist, which most people knew about her starting the bank, but they didn't know about her other activities that were really valuable and totally trailblazing. And I was really tired of not having stories about women, especially women of color, being elevated and celebrated. And so this was a perfect example. Here we have a school named for her, and it was a great opportunity, and also to visually celebrate her and educate people with the mural. And the fact it was community based was also really important. Best paint party we had was one where there was the Maggie Walker alumni from the original school, and current Maggie Walker students and alumni and community members all together in the art room. And that was just like, that was the idea behind it, was bringing people together to celebrate Maggie Walker and then create this beautiful piece of artwork. That was probably the highlight of it. We had the unveiling, that was just wonderful too. So, because a lot of people came, and Maggie Walker's great-grandson came, and his family, and they were all excited about the mural, and the alumni came. And so in the end, it kind of did what I was hoping it would do, is kind of reinvigorate the connections with the community and the former alumni and the current environments, current students. As an artist, and like in all professions, you've done something for 18 to 20 years, you kind of like, and as I said, I've been pivoting a lot over these years. I was kind of got to a point where I wasn't feeling the inspiration terribly deeply, and I was kind of looking for, I guess, a recharge of my batteries. And I had heard via a friend of this place that was a artist and writer retreat in this little tiny rural part of France, and called La Muse. And I finally got there in 2014. And it was a really transformative experience because here I'd been working as a professional artist, and this was the first time I gave myself time just to go. And actually, I'd really gotten interested at this point with the storytelling, with writing. So I kind of went to just allow myself to be free to explore. And it's a beautiful, like, crumbling village, and I was able to kind of let myself be free to experiment. So I brought like different art supplies and some things that were there at the little studio, where I just got to play for the first time in a long time with materials like pastels and other stuff. And I was trying to give myself a little freedom. I drew with charcoal first time in a long time. It was really great. But the best part was walking through nature and meeting this special doggy here, Homer, who was the dog owned by the place. It was just a really neat experience, kind of sparked where I'm going with this pet story project. But now I think I'm very interested in again, trying to find the areas where my interest in art and concept come together with storytelling and gathering other people's inputs. Things that are more communal in nature. And so the Pet Story Project right now is the first of these kinds of projects I'm really interested in pursuing. And then writing, I have a bunch of book ideas I'd like to see through, and also some children's book ideas that, coming back to how did I first start in art, was drawing based on the storybooks I had of Disney and the movies. And so in a way, coming back to work for doing artwork for children, which I have done all through my career, but in a new form, going back to books per se, or that, I think it's kind of interesting that it's come back to that. So there's a lot of ideas I have. I'm still interested in, again, other things that would bring, elevate women's stories, which haven't been told as much until recently, throughout history, and also just the people's experiences. I'm interested in people's stories and gathering those and then sharing them in some way. To recognize you need to keep inspiring yourself, so something like Lemieux. So you have to kind of nurture yourself because it is exhausting. So finding yourself a group of like-minded creative people to support each other and get yourselves through difficult times. As a professional artist, it's not just, what am I going to do today? I'm following my whim. There is always compromise, and that's the part people don't often know about somebody like me who's done it for 25 years. There's been a lot of compromise, and you have to know there's a lot of instability to it that some people can't stomach because you don't know what's around the bend. On the flip side, I also have had the autonomy and flexibility to make my own schedule and say yes and no to different projects and have a little more flexibility in raising a family. But if you do become a self-employed artist, it's very important to, I do think, having some background in business and marketing and accounting and just basic organizational skills that are required and necessary to be successful. So I would encourage everyone to, like I said, continue to try to be creative. And in today's world, I think being a creative person is actually really important because we have a lot of big problems to solve. And so I think creativity comes through not just in physical painted artwork and writing, but it's also in ideas and creative problem solving. So I encourage everyone to keep going in whatever way, just even if it just nurtures you and feeds your soul. It doesn't have to feed you physically by being the way you make a living, but it should be something that hopefully people can keep a hand in. Because I think far too often, one thing I learned through this Senior Connections project is a lot of people think art is something they leave in their youth, and they're too grown up, they don't get to do that anymore. And I really think that's a wrong idea. I think it's really good for people to always remain creative and have some fun creative pursuits.